Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Myokinetix podcast with, obviously you guys already know him, Chris Streveler from the New York Jets. But this is the part two. Obviously, if you guys haven't listened to the first one, you have to go back and listen to it. Two things, because he dropped a lot of gems on that one. Second thing, you can see the glow up of the studio, of how far we've come within a year. So again, just to honor Chris and having him back here is such a privilege to have him again. Talk about, you know, the grind, what he'd been through, the off season, and just honestly, like, dude, like that podcast blew up and everyone has messaged us nonstop of how much they love your story. So that's why I want to bring you back, just to pay homage even more.
Yeah, well, these are just regular conversations that we're having anyway, so it's easy to record them and put them out for people, and if they enjoy it, they do. So I'm happy to be back here, man.
Awesome, man. So before we get on anything, so let's catch up. What's new since whatever last season and off season, and now that you're back getting ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, back out here for OTAs now. I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, we've talked about is me and my partner, Trey, out in Arizona. We started up our own quarterback training business, ground up, and it's been going great, man. You know, it's only been rolling, like, officially since January, and we got to have 30, 35-plus quarterbacks. I mean, every weekend session we have, you know, 10-plus quarterbacks, 10-plus receivers, and it's really been taking off. So we're working on getting some merch going right now, getting some T-shirts and stuff pushed out, and you know, just all really exciting things. So other than that, you know, I was out in Arizona for the off season, lived with my girlfriend, who obviously you know. Did a couple trips, went to Napa, went to the Bahamas. My dad got married out there, which was awesome. And yeah, now I'm back in Florham Park, New Jersey. Back to work, man.
That's
it's time.
And I love that, right? Because the whole quarterback camp and the quarterback business was always in the horizon for you, and we kind of talk it through, solidify it, and I'm so happy you took action on it. And I think let's go there for a little bit, just because it's really cool for the kids, the parents, even the college athletes, even our professional guys to kind of see that there's always got to be, you can work on two things simultaneously as long as you have a good vision on it, right? And I grew up from a home where you have to have singular focus on, like, hey, you go to school, you do well in school. And as I'm growing up, I'm like, well, if I just do one thing, how else would I know what else I like? And then that's like I kind of branched out to start learning different things. And because of that, I went towards healthcare, but more fitness route. And I love where you're going with it. And so, like, what's prompted you to take action to start doing the ground up QB?
It's just I have so much knowledge of this game that, you know, I'm 28 years old. I've been playing football since I was like 8 years old, and this is going to be my 6th professional season. So I have so much knowledge of the game, and I just want to pass that on to the younger generation and help them be the best quarterbacks they can be. And to me, quarterback training is so much more than just mechanics, right? There's a thought process that goes into playing quarterback. There's a preparation that goes into playing quarterback that's different than other positions. There's just a way that you need to carry about yourself on a day-to-day basis that's different. And that's a whole other aspect that we're trying to bring to these kids and just instill that knowledge in them, that quarterback is so much more than just who can throw the football the best. There's a way you got to process. There's a way you got to act. There's a way you got to carry yourself. And it's all those things. So that's really what Ground Up's about. And it's just been so exciting to get to share some of that knowledge, you know, with these kids as we get it rolling. Yeah,
and I love that too, just because it's very similar in our business, right? So obviously, you know, we do physical therapy, but most people would look at PT with just like prescribing exercise, where everyone can prescribe exercise. Just like everyone can talk about throwing mechanics. Everyone can go on YouTube and look at throwing mechanics video, or they can go look at, you know, rehab exercise video on like knee. But I think the soft skill, the fundamental stuff, the thing that link the exercises, the thing that link the mechanics to what you do on the field, I think is extremely, extremely important. And based on your journey, right? Because in the beginning, you have to know the mechanics. But how do you personally integrate the mechanics with the mindset, and how did that help with your game?
That's a great question, because for me, that has been the biggest part of my game that has expanded in the last 2 years, is the mindset that goes along with being a professional quarterback. Because there's so many people, like you said, that can just watch a video, learn how to throw, or that can throw good, but don't have the mindset to overcome adversity, to prepare the way they need to prepare on a daily basis, and take their work seriously. And, you know, for me, that mindset has really been cultivated through a lot of the adversities I've been through. And we kind of talked about that in the first podcast, but, I mean, there's been so many ups and downs, like, just for example, last year I was on 4 different teams in a matter of like 6 months because I just kept getting cut. And through that adversity, I really learned a lot about myself and what it takes to overcome those adversities and how to really attack those challenges head on. Because when you do and you overcome that adversity, you grow as a person and you learn about, what makes you tick and who you are. So, that's where my mindset is now. And as I continue to keep playing, it's going to keep growing. And as I continue to grow, the fun thing about coaching quarterbacks and doing this other thing is it supplements what I'm actually doing professionally, right? So as I continue to learn and grow, I can pass that information down onto the kids that are working with us. And so it's really just like the perfect marriage of what I do professionally and what I'm starting to get going up in Arizona.
And I think the best way to learn is to teach. That's always my philosophy. If I know something really well, I should be able to speak on it and teach someone that know a little less than me and then bring them up to my level, right? Because that's part of leaving a good legacy in some way.
Yes, and that's funny you say that too, because I was thinking about that today, and my mechanics as a quarterback have actually gotten better this offseason, even though I was kind of dealing with, I wasn't throwing as much because I was just getting healthy, but my mechanics got better because I'm teaching these kids these things all day, every day, so it's naturally getting ingrained in my mind more so that when it's time for me to get rolling, I'm doing the things I've been teaching these kids for the last 4 or 5 months. So it's funny you say that because I've gotten better because of it.
No, because I love it, man. So when we have a new therapist, let's say we had Nick on board, shout out to Nick, he started doing some stuff. I'm like, wait, I used to do that. Why did I step away from that? Because that used to work really well. So it's one of those things where oh man, it's such a good reminder.
Right. And you're growing together too. Like some things, even since we started this, some things that I thought I believed in, not as important now, and I've kind of shifted my focus, and that's the fun thing about being a therapist, being a coach, being a teacher, whatever it may be. You're always just trying to get better, always trying to improve and find the best way to do things. So it's been a fun challenge.
Yeah. So just go back to what you're saying, dude. I think as our technology and social media and everything progresses, the fundamental kind of get away from it. And for me, when I go to conferences, when I go learn different things, I always trying to go, where's the source of this coming from and how, what's the truth behind it, right? Because, obviously you're going back to even just learning about football. There's a foundation way. To me, reading plays, watching film. We talk about it on the first podcast. If you don't know, again, it's really cool to be able to kneel down and throw 50 yards. But that doesn't mean anything if you don't know what the defense is doing, if you don't have a good understanding on where your receiver is going to be, if you can't time your throwing right. All that is just, to me, it's like a physical lip service. Yeah. It's look what I can do. It's really cool. But let your work do all the talking for you.
Yeah, I mean it looks cool, but ultimately, like I said before, it's not quarterback play. And there's, obviously everyone has a different way of doing things, but nowadays in the world of social media, there's so many things that people are putting out that maybe look really cool on social media or it looks good, but ultimately it's not going to make you a better quarterback. And what we're doing is, we want to do some of those social media things because it's how you build a business nowadays and it helps get exposure. But what we're doing is going to make you a better football player and a better quarterback. I mean, with my experience playing quarterback, my partner Trey, he was a quarterback coach at Arizona State, also played Division I himself. We've played quarterback at a high level, so we know the difference between doing stuff that looks cool with kneeling down, throwing 50 yards, things like that, and things that are actually applicable to when you get in the game.
Yeah, and I think through your journey, again, saying you were on 6 different teams last year, that's huge because each team has what they're looking for in their quarterback, right? And if you have good mechanics, but you don't have the ability to adapt to what the needs of each teams are, you're not going to make the team.
Right. And the cool thing for me, too, has been how does each quarterback room function? Because the quarterback room is so unique because it's such a small room. And like I said, there's a lot that goes onto your plate as a quarterback. So getting to be around so many different quarterbacks and, veteran guys, young guys, everything in between, you just learn a lot from those experiences, how they go about their business on a day-to-day basis, how they prepare, how they view the game in general. And so, I've built a lot of good experiences based on that stuff to where I am now to make me the quarterback that I am. And I'm looking forward to continue to growing and getting better. And like I said, sharing that with the kids that, I'm working with.
For the athletes and the parents and the coaches that are listening to this, what are your top 3 traits that you would look for that is would be a good foundation for any quarterback to have?
Yeah. I think a quarterback needs to be consistent, on the field, but also off the field. You need to know the type of person you're getting on a day-to-day basis. how annoying is it when you go in and, you're your own boss, right? But your boss you never know if he's going to be high, low, in between. Like, as a quarterback, you're a leader and you set the tone for that team. So you got to be a consistent person, consistent habits, all that stuff. Number 2, you got to be hardworking. The quarterback, like I said, he's the leader of the team. So if your quarterback's being lazy, everyone else feels like they can slack off. But if the quarterback's leading the drills, setting the tone, he's bringing the juice every day, that makes everyone else elevate. And number 3, quarterbacks got to be accountable. They got to hold people accountable. They got to hold themselves accountable. You have to hold yourself to the highest standard, because you're never going to reach where you want to get to if you don't hold yourself to that standard. You have to view yourself as that person before you are that person, if you ever want to be that. And so, those are 3 traits. I could probably name off 15 right now, but those are 3 that just come to the top of my mind as to what it takes as a quarterback and a person to be successful. And I'll even go further. None of that stuff had anything to do with throwing the ball, right? It's all about the person that you are. And that's what leadership is. It's not who can throw the hardest, who can throw the farthest. It's about those leadership qualities and those, intangible type things that people gravitate to and builds a team up and makes a good team.
Yeah, and another thing I would like to add on, or even have you add on, is what about when it comes to managing your ego? Especially not just working with your teammate, but sometimes you do have some disagreement with your coaches and all of that stuff. How do one don't let the egos get in the way of the production of the team?
I think you ultimately just got to understand, when it comes to coaches and stuff, they're just trying to help you. Everyone wants to be successful. And in football, it's such a passionate game. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be disagreements. But you just got to understand everyone has the same goal at the end of the day. And so if you ever feel yourself getting heated, just remember, everyone's trying to win. Everyone's trying to win a championship. And so, brothers fight. Best friends fight. That's part of it. But at the end of the day, it's all love at the end of the day. And people just want to be successful.
Yeah, and I love that, right? Because everybody wants to win. But for you personally, and I would love to know this, what do you put in place that is more important than winning?
On the football field, nothing. I mean, winning is the number one thing. It's not about stats. It's not about looking cool on social media and getting likes. It's about winning games. And, when you win, it's so much easier to overlook other things. When you're losing, everything kind of compounds. But, man, that's the number one goal, man. Everyone just wants to win. And
what about off the field? What is more important than winning?
I mean, just family, right? Family, the people around you, treating people right. Like, that's always been such a pillar of me as a person, is everywhere I've been, I've just tried to treat people right and be the best person I can be, because you never know how it's going to come back to you. You never know whose path you're going to cross. You never know what position you're going to be in, and it's just the right thing to do. So it's been cool for me, in terms of just treating people right, as everywhere I've been along my journey, I still have so many people from different places I've been reach out and continue to support me, because I've just tried to be a good person and treat people right along the way. And now I see it with, the way that people continue to support my career. It's been really cool.
So I love what you just said. Like, when you lose, everything compounds. And I love that saying so much, just because, like, I look at my career of where I am as a physical therapist, and most of the time where I've learned the most is when I make mistake, where, like, I didn't get the best outcome for my patient, and I kind of, like, in the past, let insurance dictate of where the patient should go as far as, like, when they should be done, when they're not ready to be done. That's why, like, me breaking off on my own was the result of that compounding mistake of letting insurance say, oh, this person's done, we can't cover for them anymore, therefore you have to let them go, rather than me saying, like, oh no, you did so well, the insurance cut you off, now we need to keep building out a plan for you to be better. From that experience, what are some big losses that you have that you took away from it for so much? Well, and you kind of happy that it happened?
I mean, dude, all these experiences where I've been cut so many times, and I've lost big games like that.
But is there, like, a key one that, like, if I call you up for it, you're like, yeah, that's the one?
I mean, getting cut from the Cardinals was a really tough point for me, because it was so unexpected. We're going into the bye week. It's like week 12 in the season. I've been on active roster for 2 years. It's like 3 days before Thanksgiving. I wake up from a nap to a call from the scout, and they say, hey, did you hear the news? And I'm like, no, what's going on? Oh, hey, I just leaked on Twitter, we're actually going to cut you tomorrow, so just bring your stuff in. That's how I found out. And it was like just a complete blindside of, I literally had just closed on a house like 3 days before that. I, had been on the active roster for 2 years, and now, I don't know what's coming next. And so for that, I really had to look in the mirror and find out who I am as a person and get back to what made me that person. Because when adversity happens, it just reveals character and it reveals what you're built of. So are you going to just make excuses and lay down and say, oh, I got the short end of the stick there? Or are you going to put your head down and say, well, I got to get better. I got to keep working hard. And, for me, whenever there's been losses, that's always been what I've gone back to as well. Work hard and good things will happen. Just keep working hard. And, I bounce around for 6-7 months, and then you see what happens with the Jets. Like, I just stayed grinding, had my head down, and finally get an opportunity, and, good things happen. So it's what I always come back to.
What did you learn from that during those reflection moments?
You can never get comfortable. You can never get complacent. And not that I did get comfortable or complacent, but it is easy to get comfortable when you're just in that place. You always have to be pushing yourself and challenging yourself to get better. Never get comfortable, because the minute you get comfortable, there's, especially in my position, there's thousands of people that want my job. So I need to approach it like that every day, as if there's 1,000 people right behind me working, trying to take it, because I need to earn it every day. Yeah.
So just for the younger listener, like what would you define, or what kind of activity would you consider being comfortable?
Just, okay, like for example, you're tired. It's week 8 in the season. I'm not saying I did this, but let's say, for example, it's week 8, All right, it's the, third down day. Should I go in and watch extra third down cut-ups, or should I go home and, take the dog for a walk? Nah, I'll just take the dog for a walk. I'm good right now. That type of stuff, you have to have a process. And that's going back to the quarterback coaching stuff. This is something that's so crucial as a professional, as a whatever level you may be. You have to have a process, and you have to stick to that process, because when things are going good or when things are going bad, you want to be able to revert back to that process and say, okay, things have, maybe we've lost a couple games in a row. Maybe I'm not playing well. What got me here? What's my process? And you stick to that every single week. That way you have a routine, you feel comfortable, and you have those pillars, if you will, to rely on and say, okay, this is my process. This is what I do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That way when Saturday, Sunday come, I'm ready to roll.
Yeah. I love that you touched on that, man, because, again, like Kobe always said, like, you rest at the end, not in the middle.
Exactly.
Right? And I always, if I need, like, something for motivation, I just go to Kobe. It's like, job not done.
He's just
job's not done.
Gold nuggets after gold nuggets, man. Like, I always watch his clips when they come up on Instagram, because like, he just gets it. Like, he's the ultimate grinder, and I mean, it's always good stuff. Yeah,
and I do like your approach to, like, what is comfortable. For me personally, is comfortable is like taking things for granted, right?
Yep.
For example, like in high school, I was doing pretty well in high school, taking all these classes, where it was a key deciding moment in junior year where I can keep taking regular classes, or I can just elevate myself to go to honors, right? And then senior year, doing like 2 or 3 AP classes, like those are just always pushing the boundary. Because if you can show up to regular class and do well, great. But doing well in regular classes just make you part of the norm. Yes. And I think if you want to be great, and again, greatness is by your own definition. I think it's individualized. You have to come up, wake up every day and figure out, how do I want to be great today? Not from someone's standard, but from your standard, right? For me, just making sure, like, all right, if I'm going to set the tone for the day, how do I want to be great? I'm going to take my cold shower. I'm going to make breakfast for my wife. I'm going to show up. I'm going to walk my dog. I'm going to read. Boom. That's how I'm going to be great. That's how I'm going to have a great morning.
Yep.
And it wasn't a great morning because bad things didn't happen. And isn't that funny, where when something is great or having a good day, it's always dictate or depends on bad things not happening.
That's actually crazy. That's crazy. And you saying that, though, like talking about being great, right? That's why you are where you are, because you not only want to be great, but you have a plan to be great. Like, everyone wants to be great. No one wants to be average. No one wants to be ordinary. But do you have a process? Do you have a plan as to how you're going to get there? Do you work like who you want to be on a daily basis? And no one just wakes up and is like, great, the best in the world one day. They worked.
Yeah.
And they did it day in and day out. And then finally it happened for them. And like, that's the beauty of everything, is just, in your business, in my line of work, like, you're always just trying to elevate and get better. How can I improve? And 1%, when you start getting higher level, it goes a long way. And so, you have to have a plan if you want to be great. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, and to touch on that too, I was literally reading about this on my flight home, and they were talking about given, like, for example, if you and I, if there's a plan in place, like, hey, here's how to be number one quarterback in D1 college, right? They give it to you, they give it to me, right? I'm going to look at it and be like, all right, I'm not going to do anything with that plan. Having a plan doesn't work unless you take action.
Yes.
And I think that's where people miss the mark, right? Because they think that, like, oh, I just have to come up with a plan. But having a plan is easier, but it's much harder to take action, to show up every day.
Yep.
To, like, oh man, it's hot. Like, like, you have to do, like, work out 3 times a day, something like that. It's hot, showing up, going to sleep early, not watching Netflix till 1 o'clock. Yep. And the challenging thing, like, every time I get to meet with someone like you, is, like, as much as it's great to be a professional athlete, that's your job. You can't just go out every single night and do all of that stuff, because the higher you are in that level, the more distraction you will get. Mm-hmm. And it's harder for you to say no. So for all, like, the high recruits out there, and you know, as you were in college, how do you prepare yourself, or how did you prepare yourself, and how do you continue to do it where you can, like, be okay saying no to different things that you know would distract you from the path that you're on?
Yeah, I mean, you could talk to anybody through my college career and early in life. Like, I was the ultimate person that would have no problem saying no to something because I had a goal. Like, when I was in high school, you talk to anyone that went to high school with me or knew me, they knew I wanted to go D1. That was my goal. And that's how I approached it every day. And, you know, people are staying out, doing things on the weekend that maybe they shouldn't have been doing. I was saying no because I needed to work out, or I needed to do this. I wanted to go to throwing on Sunday. Like, you know, how bad do you want to do something? Like, to be where you want to be, you have to give up things. You have to give up other areas of your life. You can't just have it all. So, you know, you have to be able to say no and have those priorities straight. And you touched on something earlier too that I think was really interesting, as to, you know, there's some days you just don't feel good. You don't feel good. You don't want to do things. And I remember I was in high school, and I was like a junior or senior going at this point. Like, I was already going D1, and the quarterback under me, like, he didn't really like to work out, and he always had, like, an excuse, or he wasn't feeling good. And I would always tell him, and I still say this to this day, those days where you just don't want to do it or you don't feel good, that's the day when you got to go the hardest, because that's when you find out about yourself. And once you're done doing whatever you have to do, whether it's working out, whatever it may be, you're going to feel so much better about yourself at the end of that, because you know you didn't want to do it and you still did it and you still attacked it and you overcame that. That's a small example of, like, the adversity we were talking about earlier, as to overcoming that. You find out about yourself, and that's how you grow. When you attack those challenges, whether they're big or small, daily inconveniences, you still got to attack them.
That's great, man. I believe when the routine and all the things that you do, all the no's that you participate in, create a buffer for you, because when adversity happen, how much buffer do you have to withstand those adversities, right? So, for perfect analogy, for example, so if you look at all the work that you put in as filling up your car gas tank, and you're looking at the path you're on is going on a road trip. So, for example, when someone plans for a road trip, let's say you and I are going to go to Arizona together, we don't plan for accident, we don't plan for detour, we don't plan for bad weather. So all we're trying to do is, like, okay, let's fill up the gas tank as much as we can possible, just in case something bad happens, right? If you have half the tank and something bad happen, you are going to be at a disadvantage when adversity happen. So by you preparing yourself on the day that are good, when bad thing doesn't happen, on the day that you don't feel like working, just look at it as an investment into your future self. When bad things do happen, you can bounce back from it as fast as possible. And
that could be physically or mentally, right? Like, there's you know, bad physical things can happen. Can your body bounce back? Have you been taking care of your body, doing the recovery? Do you have that plan as to, oh, you know, my hamstring's sore today, like, I know how to attack that? Or mentally, like, you have a bad game, coach is on you, do you know how to attack that and overcome that? And I think that's a great analogy as to how much gas do you have in the tank. You have a little bit of gas in the tank, just a tiny bit, and now you had a bad day at practice, you might just crumble. You might crumble, but if you have a full tank of gas and you have that confidence and that preparation and that process, you're going to know how to overcome that and get right back on the right track. So that's really cool.
Dude, it's so crazy, because I think I've been nerding out on, like, optimizing, like, health, physical, mental, spiritual, as much as I can. And we just literally been, like, rebranding everything that we do in Myokinetix to, like, get to that point, to, like, the wellness, the optimization of health, the pinnacle of health. Like, that's what I'm trying to get into. I don't want people to just come in here like, oh, I'm back on the field. Like, no, I want you to be on the field, competing at the highest level, and still accelerating, right? Excelling, getting to the next level. So when I was away on this business trip, people are like, oh, do you want to go meet up at like 10 o'clock? It's like, nah, man, I got to go get my 8 hours sleep. So like I'm saying no, where like 2 years ago, the old me be like, yeah, let's go brainstorm. Let's do that. And they're like, oh, we're going to go to a steakhouse. When do you want to go? I say 5 p.m. They're like, why so early? It's like, because it's taking me 4 hours to digest the meat I'm going to eat because I need good sleep.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, do you want to go to the bar? I was like, I'll go to the bar, but I'll have mocktail. Yeah. So like I'm like all these things that I'm saying, no, like, but what I'm trying to say, you can say yes, but just know your parameters. Right. Like every morning is non-negotiable for me to take a cold shower and to go work out first thing in the morning just to set the tone. Yeah. Right. I could have like horrible sleep, but I'm still showing up. And I'm going to have horrible sleep because I'm not in my own bed. And because I'm a grumpy old man,
You're not an old
man. But I'm so spoiled, dude. Like, you know, I like my bed. I like Cody sleeping next to me. Yeah. Like one of those things where it's, again, routine is huge for me. Yeah. When it comes to that end.
Well, that's the cool thing about you, dude, is like, that's why I love talking to you. And, you know, you text me the other day, you're like, dude, I have a plan for you. Yeah. And as an athlete, I really relate to people that are always trying to be their best, right? Mm-hmm. And elevate. And you're just one of the few examples of people in my life that are not athletes that are constantly trying to elevate and better themselves. And I really admire that about you. Like all these conferences you're going to, you're always pushing. How can you make Myokinetix better? How can you make yourself better? How can you be a better business owner, leader, boss, all these things? Like it's just really cool to see someone push themselves in their life like the same way that I push myself, just in a different area of life. You know what I mean? It's really cool, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. You saw my graph. Maybe we can superimpose this in the podcast, especially the video version of the graph that I have.
Nick said it was depressing.
Yeah, Nick hates that graph. So Nick's our media guy here hates my graph, but I'll explain the graph to you guys who are listening to this. So it's the graph that is a grid. It's called a life grid, where going across there's 52 boxes, which represent weeks in a year. Going down is from 0 to 100. That's represent year. So each week I come into my office, I black out one of the boxes to say this is the week that I'm living. So pretty much it shows how many weeks I have lived, and if I were to live to 100, how many weeks I have left. And like to most people, like Nick would say, it's super depressing. To me, it's extremely liberating, and I'll explain why. It's because now I get to see how much life I have behind me, and every time I get through something really, really hard, or I come at like we're always at a crossroad in some way, right? When it comes to decision, is either yes or no. When I'm at a crossroad, I always put that, and I imagine that graph. I say, okay, if I were to have more life behind me right now, because the life ahead of me is not guaranteed, how would I make that decision? So for me, for example, if someone come in and say, hey, I want to work with you, you know, I like what you do, but then they come up with a lot of things and they're not as committed, especially with patience, then I say, you know what? 3 years ago, I would work with you because I need to build my business. I want to help. But now I get to be kind of deliberately and kind of choosy in some way where I'll value a little match more. Whereas like, okay, if I can give you 110%, I know you'll give 110% back. Now that's a great relationship. And that's what we're trying to do. So most people, you've seen the kids we have in here, man, they're all fired up. They're ready to go. And for me, it's also take it to the next level. Like, you know, when I have a family, like whatever I'm doing, is it going to take my time away from my family or not? And if I just look at the life that I have behind me, I can say, okay, well, if tomorrow's not guaranteed, would this take time away from my family? Would this take time away from me working with my athletes, working with my team, right? So that's what's liberating about it. While like on the surface, it looks super grim, but on a deeper level, it's allowed me to make really good decisions that fits with all the things I really care for.
Yep. I think ultimately it's a perspective thing, mm-hmm. right? Like it's not the biggest calendar you've ever seen, and it's like, okay, it makes you feel like every week is so much more important. And how am I going to spend my time? Am I going to maximize this day? Am I going to maximize this week? Because once you fill it in, that's over. You're not getting that back. And so when I looked at it, immediately that's what hit me, is like the perspective of this is your life. How do you want to choose? I mean, how do you want to live it? How do you want to spend every week? And once you fill that bubble in, you don't get to redo it. So spend it wisely.
I looked at it, I was like, man, I'm on a second quarter of my life. Like if you look at it in a football perspective, right? If you're in a second quarter of your life, granted, if God gave you like all the quarters, right? How would you maximize that? And when it comes to life, like I feel like we're always paying from behind in some way because there's always things coming up. And I think I want to touch you on, I want to get your perspective on this. I've been reading this book, right? It's called The Gap and the Gain. So they're talking about perspective of looking at yourself, comparing yourself to other people, which put you in the gap, and rather than comparing yourself to yourself in the past, which give you the gain. So when it comes to what you do on a daily basis, and obviously you play with big time names, you know, you been on a lot of team. How do you stop yourself from going to the gap, which is comparing to like the guys top of the top, and then get yourself in the gain, which is comparing to how you were compared to yesterday?
So for the gap, it's interesting because, you know, I look at other quarterbacks that are better than me right now, and I don't look at that as like, oh, like I'm never going to be that good. Or I always look at it as, well, I like what he did there. Like, maybe I'll try to do that. Maybe I'll try to implement that into my game, right? And so I never look at it as like I'm comparing myself to this guy, because ultimately all I can do is be the best that I can be. And that's how I bring it back to the gain is, okay, here's the gap, right? Here's me, and here is, you know, Patrick Mahomes, right? One of the best in the game. What is he doing that maybe I could incorporate into my game that when you get to this level, 1%, 2%, 3% is a massive amount of being better, right? So, like, maybe I could do a couple things that I've seen him do on film. Like, okay, maybe I'll try that in practice. Maybe it doesn't go well, and I say, oh, okay, I can't do that. But maybe it does go well, and I add another tool to my toolbox. So I think, you know, in terms of the gap and the gain, like, I can kind of use that gap and not fall down it, but look at it and say, okay, this is how I apply this to me. Because my perspective on, you know, competition, right? In my position, it's going to be rare, if ever, that I'm going to get to come into a season and say, well, I got this one in the bag. Like, I'm going to be the guy this year. You know, like, I'm probably always going to have to compete with, you know, for my spot, for my job. And, you know, my perspective on that has always been, I need to handle my business. It's not about what you do or you do or you do. It's about me handling my business. And if I do that, then things will work out the way they're supposed to. You know, like, you can't compare yourself to other people and say, oh my gosh, he did that, now I got to do this. It's more of like, well, yay, hey, good throw. Now let me focus on me and try to make the best throw I can. It's all love, even within that competition. And so, you know, I'm kind of getting off track here, but just explaining the way like a quarterback room works. A lot of times people would think it's like competition, like I'm competing against this guy. Oh, I hope he does bad. No, I hope he does good. I want you to do the best you can do, because I'm going to do the best I can do. And we're just going to continually elevate each other through that. So going back to the original question, the gap gain, I feel like you can kind of use that gap in you know, my life to gain personally, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man, because we need to see that. The comparisons will happen no matter what, because people love comparison, and we're social creatures, so we're automatically going to do that. But to take an element of something that you see that other people have and integrate it to make it fit your game, right? You're not over here making like sidearm throw like Mahomes. Like, you're just like, okay, cool, he can do that, but that's not my game. I'm going to focus on my game and add a little bit element of what I like, what I've seen. I think that's a really cool thing.
Dude, it's like the same thing that you do with like these conferences that you go to, right? You don't have a $3 billion company. Maybe this guy does. You're not going to be that guy overnight, but maybe you can incorporate a thing or two that he does with his business and say, oh, I'm going to apply that to my business, and it's going to make me better. And who knows where I'll be at the end of the day, but I'm going to take little tidbits of pieces from people that are where maybe I want to be and apply that to me, and, you know, have the best result.
No, dude, that's absolutely perfect, because I looked at it as people like to treat competition and other people like a game of horse. In horse, whatever you do, I have to do exactly what you do. Yeah. Right? And it's based on the outcome, but you have to mimic what I do. So I think people are getting stuck in playing horse rather than actually playing actual sport that they're competing in.
Well, and that's the culture that we live in nowadays. That's social media is like, everyone's living their best life on social media, and like there's a time and a place, and it is important for branding and business and all this stuff, but you can't compare yourself to every single other person in the world, because they're not showing you what they go through on a daily basis. So if you get wrapped up in that comparison, you're going to lose yourself, and you're going to lose track of what makes you you and what's going to help you optimize yourself.
Yeah, I think if you just focus on your own game and you focus on comparing yourself to your past self, that's the best. I think that gave me so much clarity, and I started doing this thing where I don't look at my phone at all before I go to bed, and no social media, maybe like 2 or 3 hours before bed. That gave me so much clarity, because think about bring up your phone, go on social media. Like, rarely you don't feel good. Yeah. You don't feel good at all. Like, for me, I follow a lot of like business, comedy, quotes, and food.
Yeah.
I'm most likely going to get hungry.
Not what you want when you're going to bed.
I don't want to do that when I'm in bed, right? So most of you guys who are listening, like, go through like social media audits. Really figure out who you're following. Unfollow people. It's okay. There's people who follow me that I don't follow back. You don't have to go team follow back all the time. Your value's not aligned.
No, that's a good point. And I find myself, like, I had the same issue, like, with social media. I'll be laying in bed, and Tay will tell you the same thing. I'm just scrolling, and I'm just like, it's like 25 minutes later, I'm like, what am I even doing? I'm not doing anything. Like, this is so stupid. So it's been a huge point of emphasis for me, too, is, like, cutting out the social media. Set the timer on my phone for, okay, maybe you get an hour of social media a day. Cut it off at that point, right? And put it down, put it away, put it to bed, and, find other ways to, my other problem too was, like, waking up, immediately grab my phone. All right, what's going on? Like, now I'm just trying to take, like, when I wake up, obviously turn my alarm off, I take like 5 minutes and just think about what I'm going to do today, what I want that to look like, and just be intentional with how I want that day to look. And it's kind of just changed, like, my mindset to start a day instead of, like, chaotically, like, oh, what happened on Twitter? What's going on Instagram? That's not productive. It's not going to help me be my best self.
You know what's crazy, man? I was diving into this a little bit, that your brain, first thing in the morning, you have the highest P wave, and the P wave is give you a sense of clarity throughout the day. So if you actually, in the beginning, when you wake up, you don't touch your phone at all for an hour. You just get up, you sit, and not do anything. Just sit and think, or meditate, or read, and fill yourself as much positive energy first thing in the morning. It's totally changed the course of your day.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how huge of impact this was, because I used to do the same thing where, again, I might have some PTSD of running a business. Like, oh, hey, by the way, so-and-so just happened. Something happened in business. Oh, wait, you got to show up. You got to do this and that. I'm just like, you know what? At the end of the day, like, most things can wait, right? Yeah. And we have an awesome team in place now where if something bad happened, it'll get through like 3 people before it get to me.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for any high schooler, any parents out there, like, kind of cultivate that in the house of, like, hey, when you wake up, just, like, sit there and then maybe just write 3 things that you want to do today that will move you forward in whatever your goal is. Like, I try to tell all the athletes, all the patients that we have, like, when you wake up, like, set goal. Like, listen, I want to bend my knee at 30 degrees today. Yesterday, I was able to do 15. That's still a win.
Yes.
And I think people are so used to chasing big wins that even, like, and I have big wins. You have big wins, especially in the sport that you play. But, those big wins, they don't last. They're just they're just as important as the small wins.
Mm-hmm. And, you said something really cool about, the bending your knee 15 degrees, 30 degrees. And I saw a clip of Israel Adesanya, the UFC fighter, talking about something the other day, just about manifestation and how powerful manifesting what you want is. Because every single thing, and this is what he was saying, so I'm kind of just plagiarizing here, but, everything that is something was first in somebody's imagination. And so if you want to do something that day, if you want to accomplish something in the year, whatever that goal may be, you have to first imagine it and set your mind on that, because those thoughts, those words, those actions, that becomes your reality. And it goes back to everything we've been talking about here. It doesn't, you don't just roll out of bed and have good things happen to you. You intentionally set that mindset up, set a plan in action, and you do it over and over again. And that's how that becomes your reality. Whatever you manifest in your mind, whatever you say, however you act, that becomes who you are, and that becomes who you're going to become, right?
Oh, 100%. Your mind dictates your behavior, your action. It's so funny. I'm going to pull up my phone because I just did. I'll pull up my notes because usually when I read, I take notes, and this is one I want to really pass on because this is this morning. I'm reading Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill is pretty much the first OG of, like, self-help and just, like, creating wealth, creating, like, good freedom, creating life. And, like, you can see behind you, Think and Grow Rich. I have the original copy of the book from, like, the 1930s. It's right next to Baby Yoda.
Can we just talk about how cool this setup is in here, though? Like, it's awesome. So.
Yeah. So I have a copy of that just to remind me. And that's one of those books where I read every single year. And I was reading his other book. It's called The Golden Rule. And he talked about this thing called the R2A2 formula. And I'm just like, all right, what is that? That sounds really easy to remember. And the R2 is recognize and relate. So to manifest something, to create a desired outcome, you need to recognize what it is you're looking to get it, right? And then you start recognizing it by looking at someone who already did it. And then from there, you try to relate to that person, right? You look at Mahomes, you're like, all right, what boy quarterback? All right, I recognize this game. He did that really well. Okay, what did he do that I can relate? right? So now you create similarity. You create intention behind what is it that you want to get. Now you recognize this game, you create a relation. You're like, okay, he can do that, I can do that as well. Great. And then the A2 is assimilate and apply. So assimilation to me is like testing out whether it's going to work for me, right? I can be like, I was like, oh yeah, I like how Strev just tucked that ball and just run extremely fast, except I'm not as tall. So I can assimilate that.
Yeah.
But what I can do is like, well, what if I do this and this differently? And then I apply it, I get the outcome that I want, which is part of the ultimate goal. Now we're on to something.
Yes.
Right? So I think just that framework alone, and you can apply that to anything, like in school, in life. I mean, like, you know, even when you want to talk to like a girl or whatever it is, right? So if you have something to aim for, and I think having role model is huge. If you look at in this room, the books that we have, it's based on like different role models that I wish some of them are no longer alive. But if I were to be able to have a conversation with them and we have like a podcast together, right?
Yeah.
What would they say to me based on the situation I'm in or where I'm trying to go? What advice would they give me? And going through that by reading books, by watching YouTube, and again, intentionally of the people that you want to pick as your role model, that's huge, man, because you can then now recognize them and then try to, you know, apply whatever they've been doing.
Dude, and that's really, really cool, because to bring this whole thing full circle, talking about the quarterback coaching business, you know, that we're getting going here out in Arizona, you know, that R2A2 perspective is, you know, recognizing and relating. For me, my journey has been so crazy with football. Like, I was never like a 5-star recruit that was just like the number one kid in high school, right, in the country. I was always that kid that I had to go to 10, 15, 20 one-day camps to get one offer. I had to grind. I had to transfer. I had to go to the CFL, undrafted, make it to the NFL, get cut, make another team, get cut, make another team. That's such a relatable journey for 99% of these kids. Like, there's only a 1% of kids that get to go wherever they want to go. The other 99% of these kids, they got to grind every single day and earn that. And so that's why I love to do the quarterback coaching stuff that I'm doing, because I feel like I have a very relatable journey for a lot of these kids where they might not be 5-star, they might not be 4-star, they might have to grind to just get one offer. And if you get that, that's amazing. If that's your ceiling, that's amazing. But I just think it's very relatable. And then, you know, when I'm throwing with them and around them, they can apply that, right? They can apply what I'm doing. They can see me throwing and ask me questions like, what happened here in this stage? What did you do in high school? What did you do in college that got you to the highest level of the NFL now? And so just to kind of bring that whole thing full circle, and as you're describing, I'm just mentally thinking about how that relates to me, and that's exactly how it relates to me. You know, showing these kids, being relatable, and then helping them apply that as to their own journey, and, you know, what may have helped me could also help them. Yeah,
and I think the role I always look at the role of PTs as being a coach, right? But from like the health side and the wellness side. And as a coach, you have to figure out what works for the individual in front of you, not making them like you.
Yes.
Because no one's a carbon copy, right? When you come see me, I don't say, yeah, Chris, you know, you can't rotate your T-spine like I can. So good luck, man. I was like, hey, man, you got this much. Let's work with something else that you got. Because sometimes it's all about, you know, adaptation.
Yes.
And as human being, we're not all the same. And to realize that, like, hey, we're not all the same. Guess what? Our past that dictate our thoughts are also not the same, right? People always come in with their past experience, and that's how we navigate life, right? Your past experience navigate your view of life right now based on the outcome that got you here. So I can't come in and change that, but I can meet you where you are and be like, hey, man, based on this, based on your worldview, here's how you feel about yourself, here's how you move, we should go with this route, because that's more tailor fit to you. And I think I know you're going to be able to do that at your quarterback coach, because because you've been through so much, you've seen how many people move. And I think what's cool about us on a ground level is like we both like to watch how people move and how people excel, and we're always I could probably speak on your behalf that I think we both identify as being a lifelong learner, which makes life a lot more fun for me. I think that's the cool thing, because you can always evolve. And to touch on it, and as we're closing out the show, if you guys haven't heard this speech by Theodore Roosevelt, which is called "The Man in the Arena,"
it's one of my favorites. I love it.
You know what it is, right? Yeah. So it's talking about blocking out all the noise of people who are not in the arena with you. Don't let them dictate what is it that you do. right? You don't get to have a say in what I do unless you're in the arena with me, because now your opinion matters. And no disrespect, right? And someone was telling me that notice when you go to any sport events, the people who shout the loudest are the people always on the top tier balcony.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're not even close to being in an arena.
Yep.
They're the farthest away, right? So kind of pick and choose where you get your sources from, who you're listening to, and see if they actually have your best interest, and are they in the arena with you.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to tell you a quick story about that speech, because I had never heard it, and this is my second year in the CFL. It's 2019. So the season's going on. I'm the backup, but I'm kind of playing. The starter gets hurt halfway through the season, and I'm going to be the guy for the rest of the year. So, we're doing some good things, and then we kind of start to struggle. Mm-hmm. We lose a few games in a row, and, the coach, brings me in and has a conversation as to, if we don't, win this next game, we're going to be, going in a different direction. You're going to get benched, essentially, which, if you've never been in that position, it's a very, very tough position to be in mentally, and, it's a lot of pressure that comes with that. So, whatever. We end up winning the game. We start doing good again. Boom. I break my ankle. Second to last game of the year. And so I've just had tough situation after tough situation handed to me. And this was the first time I ever talked to a sports psychiatrist, and she showed me that. And it almost brought me to tears, because I'm like, this is so relatable to all this hate I'm getting from fans, all this pressure I'm putting on myself. Now I break my ankle. All these people outside of this don't matter. And so to close out that story, I break my ankle with 2 weeks left in the season, and I put in my mind that my season's not over. We're going to the playoffs in 2 weeks, and I'm gonna come back. It's my ankles. I fractured the back of my tibia, had a grade 2 high ankle sprain, and tore my low ankle ligament. So this is a very serious injury. Boom! I start grinding in the training room, and I would look at that speech every single day and be like, no one else matters. It's about who's in the arena, and that's who matters, and that's me and my teammates. And boom, boom, boom. Lo and behold, first playoff game, I come back, rush for 80 yards or something on a broken ankle, score a touchdown, win the next game. We win the Grey Cup, and everything just totally switches. And the Grey Cup celebration, if you haven't seen it, you've seen it, obviously.
You in a nice fur coat.
Yeah, exactly. It just becomes this legendary thing, and it all kind of came back to that speech for me of that's where my mind went forever, because I'm the person in here with my ankle broken. I'm the person that's putting the work in on a daily basis, about to get benched and grinding, watching film every morning at 5 a.m. And all these people that want to say negative things, want to message me, want to do all these things and boo, it doesn't matter, because you're not doing what I'm doing. And so it's just really cool that you brought that up, because that was a really big turning point for me mentally as a professional and a quarterback, of overcoming adversity and just learning how to block out that outside noise and focus on what I need to do to be the best that I can be for myself and for my teammates. So it's cool that you brought that up.
Yeah, man. It's one of my favorite speeches. You guys got to go check that out.
Yeah.
But listen, man, we're going to close it out, because that was a strong point. I don't think we can touch on it anymore when it comes to that. So before I let you go, so I want to allow you to just connect with the listener, let them know where to find you. Obviously, they can find you on social media, but if they want to learn more about working with you, with your partner, when it comes to enhancing their skill set, especially for quarterback, where can they find you?
Yeah, okay, so Instagram, CStrevy5, Twitter, CStrevy. Our company's called Ground Up Elite Quarterback Training. My partner's Trey Anderson. We're out of Phoenix in the Valley in Arizona. So, we have people coming from out of town. If you have any questions or anything, you can always DM us. We check it all the time. And even if you're not in Arizona and you have questions about quarterbacks, we're going to be starting up a podcast. We're going to be doing virtual Zoom sessions where, we're doing chalk talks. We're talking coverages, fronts, plays, all this stuff. So even if you're not in the Phoenix area, there's going to be something for you that can help you elevate your game. So feel free to reach out, and I hope to hear from a lot of you guys, man. Appreciate having me on. It's been fun.
Thank you so much. That was great. Hour-long conversation.
It's awesome.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Again, if you guys like this podcast, please share with your friend. Show Chris some support. He drops some gems all the time. If you really like this and you want him to come back, go and comment on his video. Say, yo, do another podcast with Natty. So we can just keep this
rolling. This a regular thing at this point.
Exactly. So, again, appreciate you guys. Leave us a 5-star review and share with your people.